what do I mean by that? Is a gateway, a planetary gateway, if you will. If you look at this year, Anthony, a lot of alignments are happening that don't normally happen, and they've been happening for the past, I guess you could say, 10 years. But this year especially, a lot of unusual things happening in the skies. To me, there is no coincidence to that. For example, we had a supermoon, all of these like really strange lunar eclipses and, planetary alignments. There's something to that. As there's an old saying in the occult called as above, so below. And we're all affected by each other. Our environments are affected against each other. So I perceive seeing the 1111 as some type of spiritual warning. And as you just said, all of our daemons hooking up and tapping into this greater consciousness, if you will, and giving us, I guess you could say, a heads up. I mean, there are many different perspectives to look at this. It can also be seen as a program from the powers that be. I've heard people say that as well. There are so many different realities that are unseen to the layman, to the average person, if you will. And there is also the possibility that this could all be, I guess you can say, scammed to sort of kind of draw people in a negative type of sense, a controlling mind control type of sense, and that's a possibility as well. At this point, it's very hard to say, but I guess we'll just have to ride the boat to see what manifests. But the environment that we're in, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, there are a lot of crazy things going down in the environment and with people, right?
Yes.
So there's got to be, to me, there's something to this 1111 phenomenon with consciously awake people and people on a certain path that is spiritually relevant in a good way and not necessarily a bad way, if you will.
Well, we couldn't we? We could posit the situation that, just as a very quick recap in terms of cheating the ferryman, what cheating the ferryman suggests is that if you have deja vu sensations, the idea that you feel you've been here before, this to me is evidence of a real reality, that in fact you have been here before and you have lived this life and you are existing in effectively a recording of the life that you lived last time round. But it's more complex than that, because I suggest that it's more akin to a super-duper first-person computer program. And within that computer program, we all exist, and we all create that computer program, and we select the course of action within the program depending upon our actions. In other words, every action we make has a reaction, and every choice we make has outcomes. And again, I keep coming back to the movie analogy of the movie Butterfly Effect, and the idea that whatever we do, it goes through. Now, what I've suggested is that there are, in the many worlds of politics, something put forward by a guy called Hugh Everett III in 1957. This suggests that there are literally trillions of universes, and there's trillions of Dia Nunez's, and there's trillions of Anthony Peake's, all of whom have laid down within this super-duper computer program a life that they have lived. So indeed, a version of you will have already recorded every single outcome of every decision of your life. So within this huge computer program, which other people would call the Akashic Record, and indeed an associate of mine, Irvin Laszlo, does the science of this and suggests that this is to do with a substance called zero-point energy and a zero-point field. This contains all the information that is possibly available, and because we think about it in greater detail, effectively everything around us is information. We perceive reality from information. Everything is digitized and processed by the mind. Indeed, I recently did a wonderful interview with a guy called Tom Campbell, and Tom Campbell has written a series of books called My Big Toe. And again, Tom Campbell suggests that we are existing within an amazingly complex computer program, and the computer program allows us freedom within it and freedom of action. Now, let's imagine the scenario that 70% of us that have deja vu sensations are indeed living our lives again, which means that 70% of humanity's daemons, 70% of the higher selves, on this planet are very aware of what's going to happen next. In other words, they know how things are going to pan out within this particular world, within this particular version of the many worlds interpretation. And they're starting to feel that we need to influence the behavior of our eidolons, or lower selves. And the only way they can do that is by through dreams, communicating through hints, nudges, or whatever. And again, those people out there that have read my books know that what I suggest is, depending upon how wide the doors of perception are open within our own communication channels between the eidolon and the daemon, is how effectively the daemon can communicate. But for most of us, the daemon cannot communicate verbally, as it does with many people, as it did with Joan of Arc and very many historical characters such as Socrates. But for most of us, it can't communicate directly in that way. So it has to do it in other ways. Now, some of us, it does it in dreams. As you were saying earlier on, you've had some very, very vivid dreams. And people have precognitive dreams. You read the work of people like J.W. Dunn in his wonderful book, An Experiment with Time. You will find that precognitive dreaming has been known for centuries. It's something people do, and indeed it has been argued that most dreams are precognitive. It is just that we mix up the symbolism and we miss the symbolism of the dreams. So here we have demonic guidance, as it were. Now, could it be that the demonic guidance for most of us could be the 11:11 prompt phenomenon? It could be various things that just makes us see attention. So the question is, what is it that's worrying them? Now, I don't know if you've read a series of books that were written in the the 1970s and into the 1980s, called the Riverboat series, which was written by a science fiction writer called Philip Jose Farmer. Now, the intriguing line of those books was, it's a wonderful idea, and in it you have, at the start of the novel, you have the character, and I think it is based upon the guy that translated the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, whose name has escaped me, Richard Burton. Richard Burton, who was an English explorer. And the main character is Richard Burton, the English explorer, and he's dying. And as he dies, he then wakes up, and he dies, and then he finds himself waking up, and he's in a riverbank, and all around him are people all waking up, and they're all naked, they're all hairless, and they're all about 22 years of age. And what has happened is every human being that has ever lived has been reborn on this planet called Riverworld. And there's a river on this planet that runs from the North Pole all the way around the planet to the South Pole. Now, that is what has happened. And in the book, various characters from history meet up and they develop this thing called the riverboat. And they build a riverboat. Mark Twain is involved, and Hermann Goring, and various other characters. Alice Liddell, the little girl from Alice in Wonderland. And they're all characters that get together. But the interesting thing is, as they travel, they discover that no human beings are on the planet that lived more than 15 years after a particular date. So it is clear that some kind of disaster took place with humanity. Humanity seemed to be wiped out. And the question is, they try to find out. Now, could be what's happening now is that we're in the position that we are having the inklings, the nudges, that something is about to take place. And if we don't change our behavior, we are going to face a disaster. But because we can collectively control our environment, we need to collectively be aware of these things and do something about it, which is, again, something that Tom Campbell argues. Tom argues that we are a huge collective consciousness, and this collective consciousness is existing in this planet, and we are all part of this huge consciousness. And the consciousness itself is trying to evolve, and it evolves through developing love. And love, effectively, is by bringing, and I always get this wrong, to bring down the level of dissonance within the energy fields around us. And it does this by love, by everybody helping each other out and such like. It's called entropy, is the technical term for it. And an area of high entropy is an area where there's high friction, there's wars, there's everything else. Where if you go into a low entropy, it's where there is everything everything is in order and people are communicating with each other, they're working with each other and helping each other. And is this what we're facing now? Could this be what this is all about?
Well, to be honest, I'm listening to you as you speak, and I really believe what you just said. It completely resonates with my spirit. Number one, because I've had, like I just stated, dreams that are not normal, and I'm not the only one.
Any examples? Give me examples of some of these dreams. How are they manifesting themselves?
I've had dreams where I've been, in the middle of chaos, and it's always the same dream and I'm in New York, but it's combined with a Midwestern city. And the scene is chaos. People are running to their cars. They're putting boxes in their cars and getting their children into cars, and I'm in slow motion.
Mm.
And there's a train that comes through the dream. And I always seem to miss the train, but it's for a good reason. And as the train is coming through, the skies get extremely dark. And as the train is going through and the skies get extremely dark, all of a sudden I'm in my childhood home where I grew up at. And my grandmother's there waiting for me. And then I wake up. And this has been a reoccurring dream with the chaos, with the train, and things of this nature. And I decoded this dream and talked to many other people. And, their dreams have been similar in many ways with the chaos, with people trying to escape some type of event. I've also had that same dream. It's always the same scene, but sometimes the environment is different. It's been in fire. There's a scene in Knowing. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie where fire engulfs the whole planet. And it's chaos. It's like that. It's quite El Bizarro. And I've had, like I said, I've talked to other people. They've had the same type of scenario. And not only that, Anthony, I've talked to artists. And as a matter of fact, one of the artists that was on the H20 network, him and his partner, is his painting partner, Safety Terms, and James Lightbuilder, a.k.a. Ross Terms, in Oakland, California, are drawing from a metaphysical standpoint. And, they're basically getting the same information that you just stated. So there's something, there's something to this phenomenon. It's not, it could be a fluke, but the chances are highly unlikely, if you will.
Mm.
That's just my own personal opinion. And another thing, if we look at the number 11, it's a master number, which is quite significant. And it really deals with the unconscious aspect, the dreamer, the duality, the dualism, the inner conflict, the choice. You can either take this road or you can take this road. It's the edge between greatness and self-destruction. Basically giving the potentiality, if you will, for growth, for stability and personal power that lies within the acceptance of the intuitive understanding and the spiritual truths. So basically, it seems to me that these numbers coming up are clearly showing us that there are two roads. There's a choice that can be taken. We are the pillar in between, the invisible pillar in between the number 11.
Mm-hmm. And now that's interesting, isn't it? For two reasons, really, in the sense that if you look at the numbers of 11, they are like pillars. They're going straight up and straight down. They reflect each other. The number 11 looks like two figures reflecting each other. And on top of that, is it some kind of clue about digital information as well? Because, is it 1 and 0 are the baselines of the whole digital revolution that we live within at the moment. The reason that you and I can speak at the moment and the reason that we can see our computer screens is literally just the strings of 1s and 0s. Very similar to the start of the movie The Matrix.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about it, Anthony, do you think, I mean, this is going to sound really ludicrous to some people, but I really believe this. The universe is created of numbers, a binary system. So,
this is exactly what Tom Campbell argues.
Exactly. So, not for nothing, if a being or a species, which I believe they're already here, by the way, and it's not just one, it's many, but that's a whole other show, they would not be communicating in what we call English. It would be a binary system. It would be numbers. They could be translated into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. The only universal language, as I recall, I think when was it Mariner or Voyager? When Voyager, it was very much symbols and numbers, and I think they probably placed something like pi, because of course, pi would be a universal number that would be recognized by any civilization out there. Now, clearly, the universal language is the language of numbers, and indeed, from Newton onwards, the amazing thing is how science started to discover that everything can be reduced down to numbers. And that's what everything is. It's numbers. It's calculations. And how it is that we've managed to build a whole science based upon our knowledge of mathematics. So clearly, when we look down into the deeper recesses of reality, when we look down into subatomic particles, we start to get the patterns of numbers. One of the major issues that people have in explaining quantum mechanics to the layperson is because it works its beauty within maths, or as you'd say in American math. Without the math, they couldn't do it. We use our words and our language to explain incredibly beautiful concepts. I was reading recently that only really a mathematician can appreciate the beauty of Einstein's 1915 paper with his special theory, whichever one was the special theory of relativity and one was the general theory of relativity, and I can never remember which one was which. But effectively, the beauty of what Einstein says is in the language of math, and therefore numbers are profoundly important. And it is almost as if the message is there for us, and we can't quite see it. That if we break down reality into its digital format, we realize that language and maths and everything is information. And there was an English astronomer called Jeans, and he turned around and he said that as I get more into things, I realize that the universe is not a great mechanical device, but a great thought. And that's because, thought itself is probably digital. And indeed, if we then extrapolate from this and move into some of the latest ideas about the nature of reality and the nature of how consciousness works, we go down the route of holograms. And the human brain works on holographic principles. And whatever is the reality that we perceive out there, it's again in a holographic form. And of course, holograms again can be digitized and work in that way. And I think we're starting to realize now that our senses in many ways deceive us into seeing the universe in a way that it's not. It's the human brain that constructs the reality around us that makes us see it the way it is. And indeed, one can argue that if it is true that we do create our own reality to some extent, even though we do work with other people and we interface with other people, this could be one who have very, very strongly held religious beliefs, or very, very strongly spiritual beliefs, or very, very strong rationalist beliefs. And this is because their reality is created by their mind. So therefore, the things they see around them support their belief systems. So therefore, that's why it would be very difficult for an arch skeptic listening to this conversation to accept anything we say, because literally, for their worldview, or what the philosophers would call their phaneron, what we're talking about just doesn't make sense. Whereas to anybody who's ever had a noetic experience, anybody who's had a precognition, had a precognitive dream, had an out-of-the-body experience, had a sense of wonderment at looking at a sunset, that sees the world in a very, very different way from the mechanistic way